fire. It's intriguing and powerful and dangerous, and for whatever reason, we love it. We light candles on our birthday cakes, we build campfires to sit around at nighttime, and we do really stupid stuff with it too.
Initiation sequence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yeah, don't ever do that, by the way. But the book of Daniel, chapter 3, there's a story about 3 guys who come face to face with a fire that could take their very lives in a second. Now let me set the stage a little bit for you here. The Babylonians had attacked the city of Jerusalem and took tons of people captive. And many of them, they were forced to serve the king, including Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, from day one, these guys commit themselves to God, and they stand out. They're wise and strong and capable, and they get noticed. The king gives them positions of authority in his kingdom. Now, at this point, King Nebuchadnezzar has had at least a couple of run-ins with Daniel and his friends, and he's taken notice that these guys, they're different. They serve a God who has some real power, and though he's not quite ready to give up on other gods, or humble himself for that matter, so the king builds a giant golden statue. He gathers everyone together for a big dedication ceremony, and he gives them these instructions, that at the sound of the music, everyone should bow down and worship it. And if they don't, they'll get immediately thrown into a blazing fire, which is just about the worst consequence I can possibly think of. So the music plays, and all of the people bow down and worship the golden image. All except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to bow down to anyone or anything but God. You know, for these guys, they knew exactly what they were dealing with, a giant golden statue. But the false gods that we face today, they're not so obvious, though they're just as demanding. Popularity, image, stuff, expectations, busy schedules, stress, fear, you name it. Anything we give power to in our lives can become a god when we bow down to it. You know, for us girls, bowing down can look like wearing an outfit that's a certain way, or getting that social pic to look just right to keep up that image. For guys, that can mean spending 20 hours a day on Apex so that you can keep up online, or 7 days a week practicing for a chance to make the team. Whatever it is, serving a false god is never worth it. It will eventually fail us, as all false gods do. But like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we can refuse to bow down to them. And we can do it with boldness because we have a promise from God that he will always be with us. You know, I think there's some wisdom to be found from these 3 friends too. They stuck together. Find people who will stand beside you when things get tough. Your parents, your coach, some good friends. Decide what you want to stand for and do it. If you want to honor God with your words, then get a couple of buddies and make a plan for how you're going to talk, and not just at church, but at school, and hold each other accountable. Or if you want to honor God with how you dress, set some standards and call each other out when you aren't meeting them. People who are tough take a stand. Now, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego took a stand, some of the king's advisors who were jealous of them saw it. Well, they run to the king and they tell on them. Well, the king gets super mad and he calls the 3 friends in to see him. He says, look, guys, I hear you won't serve my gods or bow down to my golden image. If this is true, just stop it. You know, bow down and we're all good. Don't you know that if you don't, you're gonna be thrown into a blazing furnace and you'll die? I can't even imagine the tension in this moment as they get ready to say what they're about to say next, right to the king's face. They say, we will never serve your gods. We will never bow down to your golden image, ever. And if you throw us into the fire, God is able to save us. But even if he doesn't, we'll never worship anything or anyone but God. These guys were tough. They didn't hesitate or back down for a second. They believed that God was God. They knew him. They trusted him. But I think it took more than just a moment of bravery for them to be this tough. Paul says in the New Testament that faith is confidence in what we hope for, assurance about what we don't see. See, faith is more than just hoping for something to be true. Faith is confidence that something is true. And because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego worshiped and obeyed God every day in the little things, again and again and again, they were convinced of God's power, and they stood with confidence in the big things. Do you want to know how people who are tough as nails stand for God in the big things? I'll tell you. They stand for God in the little things. And if you'll stand for God in the little things, you'll be tough enough to stand for God in the big things too. You know, when we trust and obey God with one thought, one word, one action at a time, and then another, and another, and another, we'll see God come through for us every time. And our hope becomes faith, a faith that drives us to stand for Him no matter what situation we face, because we know that God is for real. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it wasn't that they weren't afraid of the fire. I'm sure they were. It was that they trusted God more. And in verse 19 of chapter 3, it says that the king's attitude changed, and he totally lost his ever-loving mind. He flipped out. He ordered for the fire to be heated 10 times hotter and for the 3 men to be thrown in. And that's exactly what happened. The fire was so hot that it actually killed the soldiers who were throwing them in. Well, then, the king looked into the fire and he couldn't believe what he saw. The men were walking around, safe and sound. And not only that, but he saw a 4th man with them that he said looked like the son of a god. Well, the king shouted into the furnace, "Hey, you guys, come out right now!" And they walked right out of the furnace and stood before the king with everyone watching. Not a hair on their heads had been singed. Their robes were not burned. They didn't even smell like smoke. And as they're standing there, Nebuchadnezzar says, "Praise be to your God who rescued you." He gave God the glory. Now, I'm not saying that when we stand strong for God, He's going to make everything okay. Sometimes there's going to be a fire to walk through. And sometimes there will be real consequences. We'll lose a friend. We won't be a part of the in crowd. And we may not make the team. Stuff might get messed up. But God uses trials and difficulties in our lives for our good, to build character and to strengthen our faith. He simply asks us to trust Him, even if it comes with a cost. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew there would be a cost if they stood strong, but they were more committed to God than what pressured them. And just as God was with them in the fire, He will be with us. Imagine if you and I dared to call out the false gods in our lives. What if we refused to bow down to anything or anyone but God? What would it be like if we all took a stand for God in the little things so that we could stand for Him in the big things? How might God show Himself to the world and get the glory through the story of people like you and me who dare to be as tough as nails?